What's up, everybody? Dr. Chris here, and today we are going to go over our number one main workshop. It's called Becoming Awesomely Healthy. And whether you are brand new to our practice or you've been here for a while, you're going to get a lot of value out of it, especially in the way we think about our health and things that we've been taught or not taught. So it'll clear up a lot, and we'll just help you get a better experience here with your chiropractic care, not just here at Innate, but just like how you look at your health overall and chiropractic in general. So I'm going to share screens here. Give me 1 second. And we're going to go. You should be able to see me in the top corner there. All right, here we go. Becoming Awesomely Healthy. So in chiropractic, we have a lot of great quotes about health and how we see health. This is one of our favorites, and it says, chiropractic has one side effect, health, by B.J. Palmer. He's the developer of chiropractic. This is going way back to the late 1800s and early 1900s. And it's a really good quote, but like, what does that mean? That doesn't tell us a whole lot other than to insinuate that chiropractic makes you healthy, which it does, but let's dig in a little more on that, okay? So participation, obviously you're seeing this as an online course, so you won't be able to participate in that sort of way, but here's what I would say. At the bottom of this video, wherever you see it, or even if it's just in the email, reply back with any feedback, any questions, any follow-up questions, your takeaways, and I'll repeat that again at the end. And we are going to be going through 5 steps. So first and foremost, I'm going to tell you about my life and how I got into chiropractic, because I didn't just one day think, I didn't roll into my guidance counselor's office and say, you know what, I think chiropractic would be a great profession for me. That wasn't what I did. I lived through my own, pain and discomfort and unhealthiness, and I found chiropractic as a way out of that. So let's go way back to when I was a kid. So as a kid, I got reoccurring ear infections. They were just constantly plaguing me. My parents had a routine or a schedule in which, every other month, one of them, bit the bullet, went to the urgent care in the middle of the night with me, like 2, 3 in the morning. We always came home with the same solution, which was amoxicillin, bubblegum flavored. And we just went through this cycle over and over again. Back then, this is no internet, no real solution. Just, they were doing what they thought was best as parents. It didn't even cross their mind, and probably maybe not even yours, to seek out chiropractic care for a kid. And this is I'm like 3, 4 years old at this point. So this was just a cycle I was going through. I remember it clearly because at some point I just stopped taking the medication. If my grandparents tried to give it to me, for instance, I held it in my mouth, walked away and spit it out because I was able to trick them. So this was just ongoing. And eventually, as we were told, I grew out of my ear infections. But knowing what we know now, you probably even know this, is antibiotics, they do some nasty stuff to your gut. They wreck it. And I was in that state. And as a teenager, I then started to develop a lot of acne, which we were told was genetic. Well, I looked around and a couple relatives had some acne, but not what I was experiencing. And we know through, lots of work in science nowadays that your organs, various organs, they express themselves, they express their toxicity and try to detoxify themselves in different ways. Our gut does it through our skin. So when we're looking at something like acne, eczema, psoriasis, those sort of things, we need to look to the gut because the gut is, holding the key. Once we balance that out, you'll start to see a change. So anyway, the common thing at the time, and I'm going to assume that it's still the common thing now, is more antibiotics. So as a teenager, basically from 13 to 19, I was on antibiotics again. And this was oral antibiotics, topical antibiotics, you name it, we were trying it to help clear this up. And we never knew to look at the gut. That wasn't even on our radar. There was no internet quite yet, or it's very primitive, not like what we have now, obviously. So we would ask the doctors. I remember my mom vividly would ask the doctors, hey, could we be doing something differently? Could we be, improving our diet, or reducing dairy was a big one that she would always kind of come back to. They would always just say, no, it's a, overgrowth of bacteria, take these antibiotics, boom, on your way. Well, guess what? All that extra antibiotics did to my gut, made it worse. So finally I get on to this new medication called Accutane. If you guys remember that one, it was all sorts of bad. I believe it is now banned by the FDA. And I developed the symptoms. I never sought out a diagnosis because honestly, at this point, once things weren't going well, I just stopped seeking out medical opinions. And kind of just by default, I was just tired of it because I would just keep getting various medications and no real changes were happening. So Accutane messed with my gut even more. There was a fateful day in which I was at Disneyland with some friends. Before we entered the park, just to the left of the main gates, I could remember vividly. I just excused myself. I'm like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom real quick. And I was in there for like 45 minutes. And if you think this is like late teens, like 18, 19 years old, my friends were outside waiting. Like I was in the bathroom. I didn't know what was going on. My insides were basically defying me. So and this was like, this is not iPhone time. This is not, I may have sent a text. I don't remember that, just to say, give me a minute, something to that nature. But I was embarrassed. I was uncomfortable, in a lot of pain, and I didn't know what was going on. Well, honestly, this is what I thought. I thought that the lunch we had just had was just not agreeing with me. So we finally get out of there like 45 minutes later. We get into the park and it happens again. I'm like, okay, 2 more times in the park actually. So I'm like, you know what? At least we're in the park so they could get on a ride or whatever. But I ended that night thinking, okay, that food I ate just was not my friend. It's out of me, no problem. But then it happened again and again and again. This was happening day after day after day. I didn't know what was happening until later. I met a chiropractor, and I met him at work. I was working as a lifeguard, and he was renting out our pool that I worked at for his patients to just walk back and forth. And they were doing basically some water aerobics, water therapy in order to rehab their lower backs because they had herniated discs. So in talking, let me say this, it was boring. Like if you think of a lifeguard, there was no real risk. These were adults walking back and forth in the shallow end. They weren't doing a whole lot. So we got plenty of time to chat, the chiropractor and I. So we did that. We chatted up. And he eventually at some point asked me how my health was, or asked me what I knew about health. We got in a dialogue about it. And I spilled my guts, not literally, but pun intended. I had gut issues and I told him all about it. And he told me that chiropractic could help and that I should come to his office and get adjusted. He was going to take care of me for helping them out at the pool. And so I did. I started getting adjusted, never been adjusted previous to that. And I started to improve. Like my digestion started to improve. And this was, like I said, I'm a teenager, late teens, 19 years old. Fast food, a lot of it. Low sleep, not enough hydration. Like my lifestyle habits were not on point, yet I was improving. And then I had to learn more. I started to go in regularly. I started to hang out. I started to watch his other patients. I started to hang out there, and I was just hooked on whatever was going on. I had to learn more. Finally, he probably got tired of me hanging around his office and sent me off to go check out the chiropractic school he went to. I eventually ended up transferring there, and here I am as a chiropractor. So I've been in your shoes. Maybe you don't have gut issues. Maybe you've got something else. But I've been on the needing help end of things, and chiropractic pulled me out of where I was and basically gave me a normal life back, which is fantastic. And it's been my mission ever since to educate others to help them get to that same place. So let's move on. Step 1, we need to understand how our body works. The most important system in our body is our nervous system. Why? Because it controls and communicates everything in your body. We learned this in school, right? Our brain is our computer. The nerves that come from it are like the wires. They go to every cell, tissue, and organ in our body. So the way that it communicates is through electrical signals. It sends those signals down the nerves to its end organ, which is maybe a muscle, maybe organ itself, like the lungs or the heart or the gut. When that signal is not normal, when it's blocked up, we call that a subluxation. Subluxation is a fancy chiropractic word coined by a chiropractor way back in the day, in the early 1920s. And that word was chosen because of its Latin roots. Sub means less than, and lux means light in Latin. Okay, so it's a condition of less light. What they knew internally, they didn't have the equipment that we have now. The scans that you've maybe already done in our office or that you'll see on the next screen, they didn't have that stuff. Yet they knew there was an internal life energy, and they called it, the body's light energy. So the subluxation is a condition of less light. When you had less energy going to the right place, well, there was dysfunction in the body. And we can't have that. We don't want that. So we're going to look at that a little more in depth. So this scan right here, this is a bad scan. This is an ugly looking scan. And I choose this scan for a specific reason, because this is the scan of one of my cousins. He had a very similar path that I did. Lots of antibiotics as a kid. Eventually ended up on Accutane as well. He developed ulcerative colitis. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. Those are the symptoms that I had of ulcerative colitis as well. But like I said, I never sought out that official diagnosis. I don't need it. I know I had all those symptoms. He actually got it. So I choose this scan because this is what I feel my scan would have looked like. My first chiropractor did not have this scanning technology to be able to show this to me, but here's what you need to know. White bars are good, and then we have increasing levels of severity. So green is mild, blue is moderate, red is severe. So those colors there, what they signify is an area where the nerve is overworking. It's overworking to do a simple task. We don't want it to look like this at all. We want all white bars that are symmetrical. So know that that is a bad scan. We're going to get back to it in a second. So step 3 is that we don't guess, we test. EMG, RT, and HRV, those are the 3 scans that we do here in the office. EMG stands for electromyography, RT is rolling thermal, and HRV is heart rate variability. So what I wish I had were scans. I wish I had these for myself as a patient way back when, because I would have gotten better faster. And I'm going to back up here for a second. If I see this scan, I can start to pinpoint areas that need special attention. Okay, that's what I wish I had for myself, because if you see like the red bars, let's see if I can bring my mouse here. Yeah, I think you'll be able to see my mouse. If you can't, I'm pointing over to that T12L1 section on the right. So let's say that section, after everything starts to clear up, after all the bars start to resolve and become normal sized white bars, let's say those 2 at T12 and L1, let's say those 2 bars don't go away. Then I can figure out, okay, what organs are in that area? What muscle groups are in that area? What is this person doing that is not allowing that area to resolve? Maybe it's a nutritional thing. Maybe it's a specific adjustment. Maybe it is an exercise they need to do. Maybe it's a stretch. So there are ways that we can make this process more efficient with this technology, which I love, love, love. So I wish I had that for myself, because I would have just gotten better. Okay, here's a third scan. This is our heart rate variability scan. So I have the word here that says low adaptability, or the phrase rather. And that little white box that you see down in the lower left quadrant, that is this person's scan. This is actually one of my aunts. You can see I like to use my family as examples. And I'm blessed and grateful that I get to take care of my family in this way, because it's a lot of fun, and I get to see them, really express life differently. So at this point in her life, low adaptability. And I'll tell you a couple characteristics at this point in her life. She was already retired, was active. She had, very fun times with her grandkids. She had a lot of good lifestyle habits already going for her, but she wasn't ready to tackle her diet. So in this case, the diet is and she had already been getting adjusted under chiropractic care at this point, at least 2 to 3 years minimum, maybe longer. I'd have to look back. But so she was already doing a lot of the things we would recommend, but her diet was off. And we're going to get back to her in a second. So step 2, if you're keeping track, you know that I put step 3, then step 2. That's just to keep you on your toes. But the 3 T's, what our 3 T's are toxins, traumas, and thoughts. So in the office now, in the modern time, we now call those stresses physical stress, emotional stress, and chemical stress. So it's just a different name for it, but it's the same thing. These 3 T's were taught in chiropractic for a long, long time. And they are our three umbrellas of stress. Think about any stress in the world, and it'll fall under one of these categories. And sometimes it bleeds into multiple categories, like sleep, for instance. I can argue that a lack of good quality sleep affects all three of those three areas. So how do these things relate to our health? Well, we have an innate ability to adapt. The way we adapt and our ability to adapt to our circumstances and our environment, that's what really dictates our health. At the bottom, you see that it says adaptability is the quality of being able to adjust to new conditions. So think about your body and what it does for you all the time. If you go somewhere cold and you're not, layered up, what does your body do? It shivers, right? That shiver response is you adapting to try to warm up. You go the opposite, you go out when it's too hot, you start to sweat, and that evaporative cooling effect of the sweat helps you to adapt. So that's just in temperature regulation, but these things happen for everything. If you eat something that doesn't agree with you, your body's going to release more of this enzyme or that one to try to neutralize it and balance you out. That's always going on. So how is it then that we become subluxated? That's what we call, what these colorful bars and stuff. So if we go back to these things, toxins, traumas, and thoughts, chemical, physical, and mental stress, those things do not directly cause a subluxation in your body. They are the catalyst, let's say. So let's say a physical stress. You have seen, I would assume you've seen kids or videos of kids, or maybe even your own kids, take a rough fall. Maybe they fall off a bike, maybe they jump off the couch and take a tumble. And you think to yourself, man, they're lucky they're a kid, right? Because they're just going to brush that off. Whereas if an adult did the same thing, well, they would probably sustain some sort of trauma or some sort of injury that needed to be corrected. And we see that all the time. Kids have a different level of adaptability that we as adults can maintain throughout life, but we need to stay as physical as kids in order to be able to do that. So a single event will not throw us into, or doesn't necessarily throw us into, a subluxated state, but the accumulation can, or the magnitude can. So like if I'm just walking and I stumble, that may not be enough to subluxate me, but if I take a full-on fall, that might. So there's different levels of this whole process. If we go to chemical stress, it's one of my favorites because that's kind of where I started, right? So if you look at the strongest medication I took, which was the Accutane, taking it once probably did not subluxate my system, but taking it repeatedly for months on end, that did at some point, because my internal organs were starting to really tighten up. It affected my posture because I was more in a bent position because of the stress. So the accumulation is going to make a huge difference. The magnitude, like I said, is going to make a huge difference. So there are varying elements to this. Once our body is no longer adapting because the stress is too great, that's when we get into that subluxated state. And that's when we then intervene as chiropractors to correct it. And once we correct it, then you immediately start adapting better. And when you can adapt better to your environment, whether internal or external, you will start to go up the scale in the scans that we do, and you will just express health at a better level, which is awesome, obviously. Let's go back to my aunt here. So she made it to the green. This was after she tackled her diet. She took on the challenge after that poor scan, and she took it on responsibly and cleaned up her diet. It was pretty plain and simple logistically. Obviously, there are some challenges that come up when people are changing their diet, whether it's temptation to eat, junky food again, or, not knowing how to meal prep, things like that, and like what foods to choose. So we went through an education process to help her get there and gave her plenty of resources, and she nailed it. Now, the beautiful, beautiful thing about this is anytime that she drifts out of this green box, let's say she goes into the yellow or into the orange, she hasn't ever gone all the way back down to the red, but she has drifted from here from time to time. And I can just ask her a simple question. Hey, how's your diet been? Because I know that's the key factor that keeps her in or out of this box. And, each time she fesses up and says, just hasn't been that clean. So then we get to restart. Okay, let's clean it up. Let's get back on track. And then boom, she gets to go back in that green and she just expresses health better, which is great. And that's not going to work for every single person. This is not a one size fits all. Some people, just the way that they're built, we've seen it over the years, been doing this 10 years. And some people can have a junky diet and will still be in that green box. But if they slack on their exercise, for instance, they start to drift. So everyone's formula is a little different. Even those people that can do that, I still urge them to clean up their diet just for overall wellness. But like I'm saying here is that there's going to be varying elements for each person. And that's what we work to find out so that you can be your healthiest always. All right, step 4, we're going to adjust our thinking. This is a biggie. And so we call it the 3 stresses mindset. Like, is this increasing my stress? And we're going to use the example of coffee. Coffee, undoubtedly, you've heard great things about. Like, it can help you with all these health benefits, or it can create all these health benefits. And you've also heard things that it's the worst thing for you and don't ever drink it and just do like green tea or something like that. You've probably heard this, right? So what's the deal? How can we have such varying opinions on this thing, this simple thing? So part of it is breaking it down, like coffee. How does it go from the earth to our gut? So if we look at how it's produced, let's say, or harvested, coffee in the United States is one of the most sprayed, crops with pesticides out of any other crop. It is super duper sprayed. So that alone is increasing its toxicity. So we urge you, always go organic. Organic, fair trade, Rainforest Alliance certified, all the things in the coffee world that are going to make it cleaner for you. Number 2, how is it prepared? Like, how do you brew it? There are lots of methods. We prefer things that are non-bleaching. So like if you use a coffee filter, a paper filter, don't get the white bleached ones. That's going to leach chemicals into your coffee. When you're drinking it, are you drinking it out of plastic? Or are you drinking it out of styrofoam? Those are going to leach as well. Do something that's glass or stainless steel, something along those lines. That's going to be better for you. And then what are you adding to it? Coffee at its core should just be black, right? And if you do add anything in, please don't put sugar in there. Please don't put conventional dairy in there. That's going to make it very toxic. We don't want to do that. If you want to do some sort of cream, do a alternative milk. We prefer things like oat and coconut and almond milk, those sort of things. Those can get tricky too. That's a whole different discussion. You got to choose the right ones because some can have a lot of junk in them as well. Not as bad as the dairy, but still, we don't want to be adding, different problems to the mix. So you see how this coffee, a simple thing, can be either really good for you or really bad when you start to break down the elements that are involved. So a good, clean, organic coffee that's black and brewed in a healthy way, great for you. All the other ways are going to be toxic. Okay, and we can apply that to all sorts of things. So we ask people to start with chemical stress. If you start in the chemical stress realm, you're going to be looking at all the things around your house, basically. Your household cleaners, are they full of carcinogens and hormone disruptors? Are your foods full of preservatives and bad colorings and artificial sugars? Is your skincare, is that full of junk? Is your hair care, all these things that are around you chemically, how healthy are those for you? And so one of the sites that we truly recommend is ewg.org. If you look up or type in a cosmetics database, you will find a whole, basically a database where you can type in any product and it'll give you a ranking of how healthy or unhealthy it is. And you can go around your house doing that for basically all your commercial products. It's pretty magnificent. Think Dirty is an app where you can do a lot of the same thing. Look up those 2 things and start eliminating those stresses. The more you can reduce that stress, or what's called your toxic load, the better off you will be. And we can apply this to all sorts of things like, I'm using a computer to talk to you right now. You can't really tell, I don't think, but I'm at a standing desk. So I am not seated, I'm standing. I have a standing desk that I use all the time. So taking a computer that's very productive for getting things like this done, great. But if I'm like hunched over in a bad posture, not so great. So we want to be able to break each thing down and do the least stressful version of that as possible. Okay. Next, step 5, chiropractic is your solution. Of course, I'm a chiropractor. I'm going to tell you it's your solution, but hear me out. So, chiropractic as your primary mode of, I don't know, let's say resolution. So, we're going to look at asthma and we're going to look at Sebastian here. Sebastian came in, he's 4 years old and dealing with all kinds of things. In this case, asthma primarily. So that was the tipping point that his mom sought out some sort of different mode of taking care of this problem he was experiencing. So like you saw previously, red bars are bad, white bars are good, and then we have the in-between with the greens and the blues. But we want all white symmetrical bars, just to reiterate that. And you can see that, Sebastian's got a lot of red bars, especially on his left side. So this was March of 2016. Here is June of 2016. So we see a dramatic color pattern here, or color shift, way less red, way more white. Everything is toned down in a great fashion in this 3-month period of time. We see yellow bars. I should explain those since we didn't talk about them previously. Yellow bars are areas that are now under functioning. So what happens is this is like a bounce back reaction here. So over here where there were no yellows, basically everything on this colorful section here, these guys were all working overtime. Imagine those nerves just pumping out so much energy. They're working overtime. These yellow ones, now they're taking a break. They went on vacation. They did later calibrate in his feature scans to those white bars, which is great. But just that 3-month change was huge because during that time, here's what mom reported. He didn't use his nebulizer at all. He didn't use a steroid cream because I didn't mention this, but he had asthma. He also had eczema and was dealing with some pretty bad allergies as well. So 0 steroid cream, 0 allergy medication, 0 sneezing fits. Sniffles were nearly non-existent. He had 1 bloody nose since early March, which used to happen weekly, and he only uses emergency inhaler once, which he did frequently throughout the week. And what mom told me about that one-time emergency inhaler, she said that they had visited some friends, and the house that they visited had like literally 15 cats. So it was more of an extreme situation in which his respiratory system was really tested in the allergen category. So I think that's a huge win. And the dude just is able to live life differently now. Like not being able to run around at recess with your friends or being able to play sports when you're a kid and you should be able to, but you just can't breathe right. That is a monumental change. So going back to primary. So if this is him, right, from the beginning, and I see this, he's not been adjusted. We haven't done anything at this point. And I see these red bars and these green bars and these blue bars all coming from his lungs. But really, again, that left side in the lung section from T1 to T12 is basically all red, right? I would never expect that his lungs are going to function properly when his scan looks like this. It's just not going to happen. And so if we were to apply what we do and adjust Sebastian in just the right way, in a specific way to clear it up and to get to this point, and let's say we went even beyond this and all of these are white, and he was still having the problem, then I would be okay with some level of intervention because some people genetically just have stuff going on. That's just the way that it is. 25% of what we were given inherited from our parents. That's just hard coded into our DNA and it's not going to go away. So in those cases, yeah, let's, figure out what's the best intervention, whether it is, the most natural version of a steroid or an inhaler or whatever. But that wasn't the case. Once we started to see that, hey, we got normal nerve flow between his brain and his body, guess what? His lungs were actually working like they're supposed to. So when we normalize that flow from our brain down our spinal cord, through the spinal nerve to the body, then we can express proper health. Then I know chiropractic should be the number one solution. That should be our starting point. If we can see that the nerve energy from brain to body and body back to brain is normal, and then the problem goes away, fantastic. If it persists, then we go down another route and dig deeper. So that's why I say chiropractic should be primary. Let's measure exactly what's going on in the system. If we see a problem, let's start to correct it and let's see what the body does with it. Because our bodies internally have an innate intelligence to them. They know what to do. They know how to heal us. We are self-healing and self-regulating by nature, but sometimes we're blocked up. That blockage, like I said previously, is called a subluxation. If we're subluxated, we are not going to express health in the way that we should, and that is a straight up fact. So if we can correct those subluxations, observe how the body adapts to that and how it improves, it is going to make a world of difference. And we could then get off of, like in Sebastian's case, or even in my case when I was on all those medications, we can get off of those things because our body goes back into that self-regulating mode. And that is what we want for everyone. Because naturally, our body knows how to be healthy. We just need to make sure that these things are not blocked up and, inhibiting it from being that way. So, quick water break. I'm not going to make you review steps 1 through 5. If we're doing it in person, I'll have you do it. Here's a couple things I want you to take away from this. Chiropractic is not a cure. If we look at Sebastian's case for an example, at no point in time do we give him what we would call an asthma adjustment. That's not a thing that we do. What we're looking for is how his body was communicating the nervous system issues and the subluxation patterns. We adjust specifically to those patterns to correct them with the sole intent of correcting it and improving communication. So we're not curing asthma. We're not curing a headache. Your body knows how to do that. Only your body knows how to do that. Because imagine all the things chemically that need to take place in the lungs, in the bronchioles, and all of the pathways from your nose and your mouth to get air into your lungs and then to convert it into oxygen. There's so much beyond our level of knowledge as human beings. On a cellular level, we couldn't do that. What we can do is we can remove the interference. We can take the pressure off that nerve so that the body can figure out what to do with that and heal. What you should recognize chiropractic is doing is that it is increasing communication. So that increased communication is what I like to refer to as the text message that's no longer stuck. So if you've ever sent a text message, undoubtedly you've had an experience in which you push send and the signal or the little bar or whatever it is across the top, you see that it's not fully getting there. But you know that if you go a little more that way, that's closer to your Wi-Fi router. And if you go that way, it's going to go through. Imagine the adjustment being that, going closer to the router, and finally the signal goes through in the way it's intended. By improving that communication, the signal goes normally from point A to point B. That's what we want. That's what chiropractic is doing, is increasing that communication so that that happens in a normal, efficient manner. And then at that point, you can express health like you're supposed to. Not even like an enhanced level of health, just normal health. But because so much of what we experience is not normal, it's going to feel like you're a superhero, which is what we want for everyone to be at that level. So a couple things. Number one, share this with the community. If you know someone who wants to learn more about chiropractic and maybe you've experienced great benefits, but haven't put together a presentation like this, and by no means should you, we're not expecting you to, share this video with them. Let them watch and let them learn and develop their own questions and figure out, how this can apply to their health. The 100 for 2 weeks, I will tell you, this is something we do in office, but I'll extend it here too. Imagine you were at a workshop of ours. Anyone who takes the time to sit down with us, and we usually do it over a light meal. As a thank you for that, anyone that they refer within 2 weeks, they get $100 off their initial cost with us. So I will apply that to you. Just make sure that they mention the 100 for 2 weeks discount. That'll be their way of redeeming that. And lastly, the 1 year healthiest ever. What we want for everyone, when they first walk into our office, we want that to be the starting point of what we consider to be their healthiest year. So a year from that point, we want them to look back and say, you know what, that was the start of me being my absolute healthiest. And, I experienced that when I was in that, lifeguard job and I met my first chiropractor. I was not well. Like I was not expressing my life. Life was being interrupted for me. I vividly remember a couple instances. One, I'm a Los Angeles Kings fan. I've loved hockey like all my life. And I had purchased multiple sets of tickets for that season. I had to cancel. I had to not go to watch one of my favorite teams. And I only went like to maybe 2 or 3 games a season. And I just had to sit there and those tickets just, I just had to eat them because I couldn't go to the game because I was so physically in pain on a couple of those occasions, which was not fun. But from the moment I started getting adjusted and moving forward, I got better and better and better. And I regained the life of a 19, 20-year-old dude who just wanted to go out and have fun and experience life. And eventually it became, me becoming a chiropractor. You may not go all the way into becoming a chiropractor. Maybe you will, but know that it can help you get your life or your child's life back to where it should be, where it deserves to be, a normal, healthy state. So I'm going to leave you with one final quote here. And it says, you see, in life, lots of people know what to do, but few people actually do what they know. Knowing is not enough. You must take action. That's from Tony Robbins. So that action for you can be very different from, the next viewer. So for you, it may be, maybe you've already started your chiropractic care and maybe you need to really jump into nutrition. So let's have a conversation about that. Maybe you've been nailing the nutrition, but you haven't been moving your body and you want guidance on exercise. Maybe you go through that cosmetics database and you start to eliminate all the toxic things in your home. Whatever that is, and maybe it's not even for you. Maybe it's for someone else in your life that you need to show them this and encourage that they receive chiropractic care, or at least that evaluation, so that we can let them know if we think we can help them. Whatever it is, take that action. Identify what it is right now. You're probably already thinking of it. You probably already know or thought of it, several minutes ago. Take that action. If you need help, please, we are here to be a resource. We are here to guide you through that process. That's what we do best. And reach out to us. If you're getting this, you obviously have a connection to us already. So reach out. Let us help you get to that point where you want to be, where you're expressing your health just like you deserve to be. That's all I got for you guys. I will see you on future videos. And like I said, whatever your takeaway is, please share it with us. If you've got questions, please reach out. We're here to help. See ya.